Hello everyone, how are you all doing? I hope you're all doing absolutely great. So, welcome back to Sunita's English Adventure. First of all, thank you so much for the overwhelming response to my last video where I talked about how to improve your English with just 15 minutes of daily practice. I read so many of your comments and I'm really happy that the video helped you. This motivates me to create more videos like that, videos that are practical, realistic, and actually help you in your English learning journey. So thank you so much for everything. Now, a few days ago, I posted a poll on my YouTube channel. I asked a very simple question. What is your biggest challenge while speaking English? And around 1,000 people responded, and these were the results. 36% said, I forget words. 24% said, I make grammar mistakes. 20% said, I feel nervous. And the remaining 20% said, I don't get enough practice. Now, when I looked at these results, honestly, I wasn't surprised because this isn't the first time I've heard this. In fact, this is probably one of the most common problems among English learners. Whether I read your comments on YouTube, whether I talk to learners in my community, or whether someone messages me personally, one sentence keeps popping up again and again. Ma'am, I know the words, but I forget them while speaking. Maybe you have experienced this too. You are speaking confidently, everything is going well, and suddenly one simple word disappears. You know you have learned it, you know you have seen it before, you even know that if someone else says it, you'll understand it immediately. But when it's your turn to speak, your mind goes completely blank. Has this ever happened to you? If yes, welcome to the club because I have experienced it too. There was a time when I used to learn so many words. I had notebooks full of vocabulary words. Every day I would find new words, write their meanings down, underline them with different colored pens. Sometimes I would even revise them. But when it came to speaking, those words were nowhere to be found. And I used to think maybe my memory is not good, maybe I'm just not made for learning English. But over time, I realized something. The problem wasn't my memory, the problem was my approach. And I think the same thing is happening with many of you. So today, I'm not going to give you those usual tips like learn 10 words every day, revise your notebook, use flashcards. Instead, I'm going to share the things I learned from my own experience and from teaching hundreds of learners. So stay with me till the end because I genuinely believe this video can change the way you learn vocabulary forever. Let me ask you a simple question. Suppose you're watching an English movie, or maybe you're reading a newspaper, or scrolling through social media through Instagram, YouTube, or watching one of my videos. Suddenly, you come across a new English word. What do? Most people immediately stop, take out a notebook, write the word, and then write its Hindi meaning. Sometimes they even write the pronunciation, and then they move on. After a few minutes, another new word appears. Again, write it down, then another, and another, and another, and by the end of the day, your notebook has 20 new words. Sounds productive, doesn't it? But now let me ask you something honestly. How many of those words do you actually remember after 1 week? Or better, how many of those words have you actually used while speaking? Very few, or maybe none. And then you think, why do I keep forgetting? Here is the truth. If writing meanings in a notebook was enough, by now all of us would have memorized the Oxford Dictionary. But that's not how our brain works. Our brain is actually very smart. It doesn't try to remember everything, it remembers things that it believes are important. Think about it. Can you remember every vehicle you saw on the road yesterday? Probably not, because your brain knew that information wasn't important. Similarly, if your brain feels you'll never use a word, it simply doesn't store it for long. The first thing I want you to do this. Stop collecting words and start choosing words. There is a huge difference. Whenever you come across a new word, pause for a moment and ask yourself this question. Will I ever use this word in my real life? Not, is this an advanced word, or not, will this make me sound intelligent? Just ask, will I actually use it? If the answer is no, leave it. You don't have to learn every single word you come across. You're not preparing to become a dictionary. You're learning English to communicate, and communication is always connected to life. This brings me to another important question. Before learning vocabulary, ask yourself, why are you learning English in the first place? Seriously, take a moment and think about it. What's your goal? Are you learning English because you need it in your office? Are you preparing for interviews? Are you a teacher who wants to communicate confidently with her students? Are you a doctor who wants to explain medical conditions to patients in English? Or are you a homemaker who simply wants to speak English with your children? Your answer matters because your goal decides your vocabulary, not somebody else's vocabulary list. Let me explain this with a simple example. Imagine you are a teacher. Which words will you naturally use every single day? Homework, assignment, attendance, revision, explain, participate, submit. These words are part of your daily conversations. Now imagine you are a doctor. Will you use the same vocabulary? Not really. Your words will be different, like symptoms, diagnosis, treatment, prescription, appointment, patient, medicine. Now you think about someone working in an office. Their vocabulary will be completely different again, like meeting, deadline, presentation, project, client, schedule, feedback. Can you see what's happening? Each person needs a different set of words. So, why are we all trying to learn the same random vocabulary list from the internet? That's one of the biggest reasons we forget, because many of those words never become part of our lives. So, from today onwards, be selective. Learn fewer words, but learn the right words. Now, suppose you found a useful word, what's the next step? Most learners immediately search Google, open a dictionary, and copy the exact definition into their notebook. Please don't do that. Dictionary definitions are written to explain the word, not to help you remember it. Instead, understand the meaning first, then close the dictionary. Now, explain that word to yourself in your own simple language. Imagine you're explaining it to your younger brother or sister or maybe a friend. So, use simple words, your own words, because your brain remembers your language much better than formal definitions. Now, suppose you found a useful word, you've understood its meaning, maybe you have even written it in your own words. Wonderful. But this is where most learners stop, and that's exactly why they forget. Because understanding a word is not as same as owning it. A word becomes yours only when you start using it. Now, let me tell you another mistake that almost everyone makes. After learning a new word, they frame one sentence, sometimes two, and then they close the notebook and move on to the next word. But let me ask you something. If you meet a person only once, will you remember everything about them after 6 months? Probably not. You remember people because you meet them repeatedly. The same thing happens with words. A word becomes familiar only after you meet it again and again. So don't frame any sentence, frame your sentence, a sentence that you can actually imagine yourself saying it in the future. For example, suppose you learn the word hesitate. Instead of writing, the king hesitated before entering the magnificent palace. Honestly, when are we ever going to say that? Instead, write, I hesitate before speaking English. I hesitate while talking to strangers. Don't hesitate to ask me questions. Can you see the difference? These are real life sentences. Your brain immediately connects them with your own experiences, and whenever learning becomes personal, remembering becomes much easier. Now comes the most important step. Don't wait for these words to magically appear while speaking. You have to use them intentionally. You have to use them consciously. I always tell my learners something. If the words don't come to you, you go to the words. Don't wait for an opportunity. Create one. Suppose today you've learned the word confident. Use it today itself. Stand in front of the mirror and say, I want to become confident English speaker. She looks very confident. I'm feeling more confident than yesterday. And if you do have a co learner or friend who is learning English with you, don't just call them and talk about random things. Be intentional. Let's say today you learned vocabulary related to traveling. Then ask your partner, let's talk about traveling today. Discuss your favorite destination, talk about your last trip, share your travel plans. The more you stray around the same topic, the more naturally those words will enter your active vocabulary. Now, let me tell you something that nobody told me when I was learning English. Even after doing all of this, you may still forget. Yes, you heard me right. You might use a word 2 or 3 times, remember it for a few weeks, and then one day you'll forget it again. And do you know what most learners do at this point? They panic. They say, oh no, I'm forgetting again. My memory is so weak. Maybe I'll never become fluent. Please don't do that to yourself. Forgetting is not a sign that you're a bad learner, it's a sign that you're a human being. We all forget. I forget, you forget, even native speakers forget words sometimes. Have you ever noticed people saying, it's on the tip of my tongue? They know the word, they just can't remember it at that moment. It happens to everyone. The difference is they don't panic. So stop blaming yourself every time you forget something. Instead, accept one simple truth. We are humans, we forget. The goal is not to have a perfect memory. The goal is to reduce the gap between forgetting and remembering. Every time you revisit a word, your brain strengthens that connection. Think of it like walking on a grassy path. The first time, the path is hardly visible. Walk again, it becomes clearer. Walk 10 times, now there is a proper pathway. Your brain works exactly the same way. So, what's the solution? Stay connected with English. Consume English regularly, not because you have homework, but because that's how your brain keeps meeting those words again and again. Watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, read short articles, read stories, watch interviews. Notice how people actually use those words. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to memorize anything. When you repeatedly see the same word in different situation, your brain naturally starts understanding where and when that word fits. That's how your passive vocabulary slowly becomes active vocabulary. One more important tip while speaking: suppose you suddenly forget a word. What do? Most learners freeze, they stop talking completely. They spend the next 30 seconds trying to remember one perfect word. But please don't do that. Communication is much more important than vocabulary. If you forget a word, use a simpler one, use a synonym, or explain the idea. For example, if you forget the word purchase, say buy. Forget assist, say help. Forget delicious, say very tasty. Forget enormous, say very big. Don't let one forgotten word stop the entire conversation. Fluent speakers don't know every word, they simply know how to keep the conversation going, and that's what much more valuable skill. Here is another game changing tip: don't learn words in isolation. Learn them in sentence patterns. For example, instead of learning only the word recommend, learn the complete pattern. I highly recommend. Now complete it differently every time. I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend this app. I highly recommend this restaurant. I highly recommend this YouTube channel. Without even realizing it, you're learning vocabulary, grammar, and sentence structure all together. This is exactly how children learn their first language. Nobody teaches them isolated words. They learn complete chunks, and that's why they speak naturally. Finally, prepare topics, not vocabulary list. Suppose tomorrow you're going to discuss education. Don't directly start speaking. Spend 10 or 15 minutes preparing. Read one short article, watch one YouTube video, listen to one podcast on education, notice useful words, notice useful expression, and then immediately discuss the same topic with your speaking partner. Can you imagine how much easier it becomes? Because you have just seen those words in context. Now your brain already knows how they are used, and that's exactly how vocabulary sticks. Not through memorization, but through meaningful use. So, if I have to summarize today's video in one sentence, I would say: don't collect words, build a relationship with them. Choose words that match your life, understand them in your own language. Write personal sentences, use them intentionally. Consume English regularly, prepare topics, and don't panic when you forget. Because forgetting isn't failure, giving up is. Remember, be patient with yourself. Learning English is not a race, it's a journey. And every conversation you have, every article you read, every video you watch, every mistake you make is taking you one step closer to fluency. So, if you found today's video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button because it really supports the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep learning, keep speaking, and remember, English is not about knowing thousands of words, it's about confidently using the words you already know. Bye bye. Take care.